So, hello again. It's been a little while. Can't say it was exactly my plan back when I uploaded the last video about my progress and the tools I had started working on last May. But here we are 8 months later. Originally, it was my plan to do at least 1 or 2 more videos during the rest of summer as I continued to work on the game, but due to some other projects I took part in and just wanting to enjoy the summer a little bit, things ended up slowly but surely sizzling out. I took part in the GMTK jam, and after that, well, nothing. Some art responsibilities took the front seat for a little while, as I focused on some community projects for most of August, and when I was planning on getting back to it all, well... Let's just say I've begun to think of my options regarding the future pretty quickly. All of this was followed by me ending up fairly busy with university for the first time in a good while, so as I tackled a bunch of UX related courses, lasting from September all the way to December, I couldn't exactly work on the project much. And as things stand, that's pretty much the short of it. And with that, I suppose I can give a slightly longer account of everything that's been going on. Back during the summer, after the first 2 videos, I worked on progressing a vertical slice of the game for testing purposes. This mostly included some different scenes, a couple really rushed test bosses, as well as more tools for development's sake. I got to also improve some of my tech and tools, and adapted to use tiled better compared to before, figuring out different collision layers, materials, mixing tile sets using auto-tiling, and using shaders. I added a lamp. Yay. Well, dare I say, not a lot, if any, testing was actually made, and as mentioned, the progress ended up sizzling soon after fairly quickly due to the already mentioned different reasons. But, well, I suppose I still gained something from it regardless. If there's anything specific I gained a new realization that level design is hard, and I'm definitely not cut out for it quite yet. I'm definitely gonna have to look into other Metroidvanias a little deeper and analyze level design a bit more before I set out on anything specific. The summer was coming to an end, and it was time to finish up some quick art for a community artbook I took part in, which, dare I say, came out pretty nicely. And do check out the free digital copy if you are interested in that sort of thing at all, though, of course, a fair mild warning for some skimpy clothing, because it has summer-themed art in it after all. Despite university taking most of my time after that until recently, I wasn't actually exactly keeping away from the project either, as I managed to snag a seat in a character design and storytelling related course, which I managed to spend refining and polishing some of the current plans and blueprints for what should, at the end of the day, turn into the narrative of the game in some shape or form. I of course had some of the character designs from beforehand, like the game's protagonist, Rai, but it was honestly a nice excuse for me to spread my wings a little and spend a little while doodling and coming up with some more designs I had been lacking. Of course, these might, and definitely will, change over time, but take it as a sign of things to come. Speaking of which, there's a chance I might make a video in the near future about my design workflows and examples, so if you're interested in that, definitely let me know. I also have something else planned for the narrative development in tandem with the main game for testing purposes, which I will probably talk about at a later date when I'm more set on things. Now, after a good Christmas break and fair time to think, it came time for me to finally decide my choice regarding the future of the game project. Would I keep everything I had as is and keep working with Unity despite their screw up and later somewhat of a U-turn? Or would I finally take a dive into a different solution? Well, as is pretty clear from some of the clips thus far in the video, I presume, I took the plunge and downloaded Godot. Of course, I wasn't exactly thrilled about translating and rebuilding the entire game thus far from one engine to another, but I figured I was still at a point in development where I could easily remake and change things without too much of a hassle, and as pointed out by a few comments in the previous video, some of my code is fairly dodgy and definitely in need of a rewrite. Of course, most of that dodgy code is still in there. And so, over the last month or so, after spending a bit of time getting familiar with Godot with the help of ClearCode's 11-hour tutorial, thank you, seriously, I've spent most of my days translating the old Unity scripts to Godot C#, rewriting and redesigning systems where needed. And the experience hasn't exactly been as bad as I thought it might be. Not only have I translated most of the basic code from Unity by now, I've also improved and worked with Godot's functions, or a lack thereof in some cases, to reinvent some tools I had. For instance, it was fairly painful for me to manually adjust parallax backgrounds by hand. So now, in Godot, I created a tool specifically for creating sets of backgrounds at a click of a button, or well, as is right now, by a click of a ball. I also had to battle with Godot's animation tools, and ended up creating a hybrid solution working in tandem with the built-in animation states. Despite me being a bit baffled due to only being able to work with one sprite sheet for animations, I did realize a potential way of working around and with these limitations. I noticed that, unlike in Unity, where the built-in animator takes in the actual sprites as frames, Godot works by saving the frame index, and thus the sprite itself does not actually matter. All that matters at the end of the day is that there is a sprite. Due to this fact, it allowed me to create a custom animation controller that handles both the animation states and switching between different sprite sheets per animation basis. Not only that, but due to me being able to switch out sprite sheets as long as the frame counts match, I can also happily eventually add different outfits or other variations of rice sprites when the time comes and switch them on the fly without having to worry about different versions of the player objects or anything similar. I admittedly also had a bit of an issue in how I implemented things like UI and HUD elements, as well as all kinds of managers. Most of these elements had an origin from around the time I started messing around in Unity, and without knowing any better, due to that fact, most of these utility or manager elements of the game were in fact put into every single scene manually. This was, all things considered, a horrible thing to manage and upkeep, so I figured it was time for it to finally go. Now, with the help of Godot's fairly comprehensible node tree system, I simply have an autoloaded node that handles instantiating all UI elements, screen transitions, and other manager nodes under itself under the root node. This saves me a lot of time, as instead of having to manually place every required element into every scene like in the past, everything is readily available after the instantiation. This way, I save a lot of time when switching and reloading scenes, and everything is just universally a lot more clear, and I won't have to start worrying about keeping everything up to date in every level, potentially climbing up to the 3 digits eventually. Despite the few shortcomings or issues that I've had with Godot, I still most definitely think it's not a bad choice for me, even if it is still behind most modern game engines in most regards. Despite these facts, it's a fairly competent little engine nowadays, and has been chugging along nicely uphill for a good while now from what I've occasionally glimpsed into the community. While compared to Godot, Unity is certainly feature-rich, it's also extremely bloated. Having to now boot up the Unity project on the side to check up on something, I've just been reminded of the stark difference in startup speeds between the two. Of course, Godot wasn't my only choice, as I looked both into Unreal and GameMaker as well, especially after the latter's licensing changes. But as a believer in the future of open source software due to how Blender has fared, I figured Godot would be what I'd call home for Field of Flowers for the future. And that's pretty much the long version of everything that has been going on in the last 8 or so months since the last upload. Not exactly a home run in terms of progress, but as my plans are right now, progress is going to happen. I will be in fact focusing on the game full time for at least 4 to 5 months, working as an entrepreneur for my internship credits for university. And I can now officially announce that I also have technically started a studio, Ikiruska Studios. Of course, that name won't really say much for non-Finnish speakers, but it's mostly Ever Autumn translated into Finnish. I'll still be operating under my own alias for the time being, as I'm the only one working for the studio for what will be most of the game at least, but I suppose I can never know, of course. Feel free to follow the Twitter account that I created for the company on Twitter, but I will probably not be super active on posting there for now, but I promise I will definitely drop something in there. And with that, we've also pretty much covered my rough plans for the next few months, which also include me trying to get a little more active here again, even if it's only a video about a month or so. I now also have a public itch page for the current test build of the game, which I have already had some friends hop around in. It's not exactly filled to the brim with content, as it is just a single room with some minor elements, and it still has quite a few bugs. But if anyone is interested, feel free to go download it from the link found below. The game is still eons away from being anywhere close to finished, but if you want, it's a nice way of spending a couple minutes of your day, I suppose. I probably won't be updating it as frequently as my private test build uploads, but I will try to occasionally drop something new in there for those willing to take a look. Of course, just like before, if anyone has anything to comment on about anything in the video, or any other questions in general, I'll be glad to read up and answer them below the video. Thank you for 1,000 subscribers, I suppose, and all the views, especially on the previous video. Took me by quite a surprise to see it reach almost 20,000 views in just those few months, despite me not really being around. I know it's not that big of a number in YouTube terms, but to me I think it's a kind of an accomplishment anyway. So with that, thank you, peace, and see you later.